talking about. First of all, the tax bill, it's all about cutting income to the federal government. And over a 10-year period, the top 1% are going to gain $5 trillion. The bottom 99% are going to lose $3.5 trillion. And the remaining $1.5 trillion will be added to the national debt. Also, we can give a $5 trillion tax cut. They keep characterizing it as a $1.5 trillion tax cut. No, that's just the amount added to the debt. When you add the amount that they're taking away from people who make less than $1 million a year and giving to people who make more than $1 million a year, it's a $5 trillion tax cut. Now, that's the tax cut. That doesn't deal with spending. The Constitution is very clear that only Congress can appropriate, only Congress can lay taxes, and only Congress can appropriate funds to be spent. The spending of them is done by the executive branch, but the appropriation of those funds, the gathering of the money, the authorization of the money, the handing the money over to the executive branch so that they can spend it, that all happens within Congress. And so Congress has to come up with a spending bill. And they don't have one. They've been operating under continuing resolutions for years. They're operating under continuing, basically all continuing resolution says is, you know, whatever we did last year, we're going to do the same thing this year. And the problem with that is it doesn't adjust things to inflation at all. It's not even as bad as the CPI that the Republicans are going to use to calculate your future taxes to move working class people, middle class people into higher tax brackets more rapidly. Keep in mind, the very rich are already at the highest tax bracket. They don't care about bracket creep. They don't care about inflation. You know, all they care about is their taxes going away. So there's that. And so House Republican leaders, now they have to come up with a way to spend the money that they are raising through taxes, or that in this case they're not raising through taxes. They want to raise the spending on the Defense Department to $650 trillion. Keep in mind, just a few years ago, it was only $500 trillion. You know, we spend more than the rest of the world pretty much combined on this stuff. It is nuts. It's just plain old flat out nuts what's going on and how just, you know, crazed it is. And this whole tax deal, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, he called it, I was grasping for a word just a minute ago. Chuck Schumer, the ultimate statement. He calls this, quote, a spectacle, a charade, a sop to some militant hard-right people who don't want the government to spend money on almost anything. And this is the spending bill, not the taxation bill. Right? They're gonna need this, and the Democrats are saying, we're not going to vote for your damn spending bill. See, it's going to take 60 votes to get it through the Senate. You can't do a spending bill. Well, you could do a spending bill via reconciliation, but you know, now that the Republicans have cut so much money, so much income out of the federal budget by cutting taxes on billionaires and corporations, you know, now that they've done that, they're going to have, you know, a real serious problem passing a spending bill without 60 votes, because it's going to further add to the debt. And what that means, if they don't pass a spending bill and they don't pass a continuing resolution, right now we're operating under a continuing resolution that takes us to December 19th, which is tomorrow. And then, you know, they want to extend this. They're talking about extending it maybe to January 19th for another month. And they're talking about extending the Pentagon portion of it, the $650 billion they want to give away to the Pentagon, the home of fraud and waste, the home of $2 trillion that has never been accounted for. The group that flew pallets of $100 bills, $6 billion worth, enough to be seen from outer space over to Iraq, and then just handed them out. They want to give that spending increase to the Pentagon for a full year, while spending, you know, whatever increases for all the rest of it, not so much. And I've got a question for you. I find this absolutely fascinating. Susan Crawford, who wrote Responsive City and Captive Audience, a couple of books. She's a professor at the Harvard Law School. And over at Wired magazine, she's writing about the case of Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, Kentucky, or West Louisville specifically. She writes, not only would West Louisville get a better chance at better access for its homes and businesses, but the city could install fiber-controlled traffic signals, create better and cheaper connectivity for public safety agencies, and ship data around inexpensively to improve its operations. In other words, West Louisville is looking at doing what Chattanooga did, which is installing a municipal broadband infrastructure, having the city install high-speed fiber cable so that every business, every family, every person, every government office, every library has faster than a greased pig, you know, or to pick your metaphor, right, super fast internet capability. She writes, in a nutshell, the city would build the infrastructure and lease the capacity to private internet service providers. Grace Simral, the chief of civic innovation for Louisville, says, quote, we were looking at this as our smart city foundation. And then a couple of special interest groups came along and started running ads and lobbying against it. Now, one of them, predictably, was the Cable Trade Association in Kentucky. They were saying, you know, come on, we're the Cable Trade Association. You need to force people to get their internet from us. You know, Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, you know, we need to make money here. We need to pay our stockholders their $1 billion in dividends. We need to pay our CEOs his multi-million-dollar salary. He's got another house in Switzerland he wants to buy. But in addition to the usual suspects, the Cable Trade Association and their buddies, there was another group that was saying, don't have public broadband in Louisville. And this group was called the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Now, who is the Taxpayers Protection Alliance? They, for example, they just tweeted out, quote, Google suspended its fiber efforts in many cities due to costs, now wants Louisville taxpayers to foot the $5.4 million bill, which is just a complete lie, right? The Louisville deal had nothing to do with Google. Or a lie by deception, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what you would call it. But why did Charles and David Koch, who make their money on fossil fuels and Georgia Pacific and everything else, why do they care that Louisville might be getting public broadband? Do they own a broadband company? Are they planning on buying Comcast or Verizon? Is that what's next? Or do they just like the idea of consolidating the public information space into a small number of very, very, very wealthy hands? I suspect the latter. Meteor Blades, who wrote this piece, the subhead for the photograph of the Koch brothers, says the Koch brothers ought to call their operations the Wrecking Crew. The public benefits would be substantial, right? You know, high-speed internet. It's good for business. This is the freeway of the modern era. This is important stuff. And the Koch brothers want it not to happen. What is it? Anything that's good for America, they're opposed to. You know, if it's good for America in general and not just exclusively for the billionaire class. Is that what it's come down to? What do you think? We'll pick up your calls after this. Stick around. It's 15 minutes.